Well, Lakers, they're down. We're 0-2. I am a Lakers fan. Dan, Lakers fan.
Yeah, absolutely.
so we're
Absolutely.
so we're down. And what were some of your thoughts about the game?
Close. Should have had it. The air's a little thin in Denver, Us Los Angeles down here breathing very thick oxygen. You go up to Denver, and it's a little harder to breathe up there because we're a better team. Lakers are a better team,
Yeah,
and I think we'll see that hopefully tomorrow when they play down here in Los Angeles. We have the home court advantage, and we got to win this game to stay in there.
yeah. It was taking a look at some of the highlights. Looked like the Nuggets were shooting really, really well in that fourth quarter, just really on it. And like you said, I wonder if that's true. I know one of my good friends, he's a professional boxer, and they're training up in Big Bear and doing those type of things to prepare for that. So I definitely, for an athlete, I'm sure that might take a toll because you're not able to hold as much oxygen when you're playing. So it could be a big element of what's happening. So hopefully we can win these next games so we don't have to go back to to Denver, or we can train for that.
They've got to get Jokic off his game. He's deadly accurate, deadly shooter, and hopefully they can put a little more pressure on him. I guess LeBron's been one-on-one with him, so that's a good matchup. But yeah, it's our time. It's our turn to win. Hopefully this weekend.
Yeah, it's going to be great. So enjoy the action out there. So when it comes to any Lakers or whatever your favorite team or your favorite athlete, and they need to set up trust. I know that everybody should have a trust, but if we're going to segment a little bit, is there anything special for somebody who's an athlete and they need to set up a trust? Is given that maybe that they're putting wear and tear on their bodies, or just things that can come up, or they can get into an injury. Do you have any thoughts about estate planning or setting up a trust for athletes? And
Absolutely. In fact, we've done multiple trusts for some athletes, and of course, athletes. I mean, the main thing is they're at the top of their game if they're professional athletes, and their earnings are usually quite high. So they have high net worth, they have high annual earnings, they have real estate holdings, and many of these athletes have endorsements and properties and businesses. And all of these types of assets can go through the probate court if they don't have a trust. So trusts for athletes are very, very important, maybe even more important for an athlete with all that money and net worth to have a trust than even your average person. The thing about athletes, though, is they're young. I'm sure in their own eyes, they don't plan on dying anytime soon. So they're like, why do I need a trust and a will? But it's not about one's age. Getting a trust is really about one's station in life and one's net worth. Does one have children? And if a person meets any of those requirements, then they really need a trust. So, yeah, I think it's important to get in front of athletes, talk to them about the advantages of proper estate planning, make sure they have a trust, a living trust to avoid probate, a will as a backup to the trust, advanced healthcare directives, durable powers of attorney, and then deeds and assignments that transfer all of their properties into the trust. And even though it might be the furthest thing from their mind, I think a lot of these athletes are very successful, highly organized, and very competitive people. Athletes don't like to lose. So why would they want to have a crappy estate plan that's going to allow their families to lose to the courts and the legal system? So athletes are winners, and I think winners have trust because it's by far the best way to go, the best way to organize one's assets.
Mm-hmm. So, given that, let's say, situations even in estate planning, there's an injury, or in boxing, somebody gets knocked out and they're in a coma, or this stuff happens sometimes, right? Where you're pretty much, can we talk a little bit about like power of attorneys and how that comes into the, setting up the entire estate plan?
Sure. Yeah. Proper estate plan is important, not if someone passes away. But as you said, Chris, even if they become incapacitated. And you can think of athletes whose their hearts have stopped beating on the field or on the court, right? Near fatal injuries. and yet they're still alive. So what happens during that period of time where they're alive but they're incapacitated? And that's where the power of attorney is important, and the living trust is important, because the designated successor trustee or the designated agent for purposes of making financial and medical decisions can step in and keep the ball going, so to speak. Make sure bills are paid, tax returns are filed until the athlete recovers. And then the athlete once again is back in charge of their own affairs. But during that period, if they're incapacitated, the court doesn't take over. It's the athlete's own spouse or family or kids that they've designated. They'll be in charge, and not the public court system.
And what I hear too a lot, Dan, is just, and this doesn't even have to be an athlete, but a lot of people, even when they set up a power of attorney, or they think, first of all, I don't hear a lot of people setting one up. And two, the people that have it, sometimes there's like fraud. So then I'm thinking, if I have a lot of high net worth, do I have, as an athlete, professional athlete, do I have a business manager in charge of that? Or can I limit my, restrict the bank accounts to a certain amount? Are there certain provisions so somebody just can't have to reduce fraud or not have a heyday and just take all the money and say, yeah, I'm in control of it at the bank and I can control, his or her money? And, any thoughts around that? Because I hear that quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I mean, we've all heard stories about the manager that absconds with assets, and basically that's crime, right? So the key when designing a person's trust is to make sure that they select someone who's going to be in charge of their money that they can trust, someone who's not going to take the money. I mean, ultimately, if a successor trustee takes money from the trust, that's a crime. I mean, they could go to jail. It's not a good thing. But the first problem that occurred is the athlete might have named the wrong person in charge. So that's why it's so important for athletes to name someone they really trust. And if they want to have a little oversight, they can name co-trustees. They can have two people, and that way there's a little check and balance, and each trustee can keep an eye on the other, and they can help each other. So co-trustees is one solution. And sometimes a business manager could be a successor trustee, but usually I recommend they try to find someone in the family, someone who's blood, someone who's going to be loyal to the very, very end. And not to say a business manager couldn't. I'm sure there are some managers out there that might be
like
the
family.
best. They're like family. They might be the best qualified, most knowledgeable person to manage a rather complex estate with endorsements and royalties and all of this.
Lawyers, and everybody's trying to fight at it if something happens. I can only imagine.
But you think back to Michael Jordan and his mother. I don't know if you've seen Air on Netflix, and the story of how Sonny worked with Mrs. Jordan, kind of went around the agent, in fact, because the agent was killing the deal. And the agent wanted Jordan's endorsement to go to Adidas or Converse. Didn't want to talk to Nike because they didn't have a good basketball shoe, right? So what did he do? The Nike representative, sales rep, Sonny, basically went around the agent, flew to North Carolina and talked to Mrs. Jordan, got in the backyard, they had tea together, and basically she made the right decision.
Yeah.
And not only did she decide to go, did she encourage Michael Jordan to go with Nike, and they developed his own shoe.
Yep.
He wasn't just in a stable with a bunch of other athletes, right? He had Jordan Air. He had his own shoes. So they really put him front and center. But the biggest thing that she did that the agent didn't even think of was she negotiated a percentage of all the Jordan Air sales to go to her son and the family. And that was the first time an athlete had ever really gotten a share of the gross sales. And right now, they estimate the family could be getting upwards of $400 million per year because the mother had better sense than the agent did.
Wow, yeah.
So once again, don't rule out family. I mean, agents are very good at what they do, negotiating deals, but sometimes mothers are even better.
Yeah, best interest in mind.
Right.
No, that's great. So when it comes to athletes, not only injuries, not only like a level of success, but if they have what I guess what I would just make a stereotype, because they're putting wear and tear on their bodies, They can't obviously do this when they're 70. I know George Foreman was like exception. There's some exceptional athletes, but because of that that wear and tear on their bodies. And can we talk a little bit about how does anything like healthcare directives come into mind, or anything they should do for estate planning and kind of medical, just because they're having that wear and tear in their bodies? Something that special clauses, or just anything that maybe another person wouldn't have, or everybody should have.
Yeah. And it's not just wear and tear on the bodies, but athletes are in planes, trains, and automobiles, and mostly planes. They're flying all over the place, so they're at a slightly increased risk, unfortunately, of an accident. I mean, anybody that travels a lot,
Sure.
Could,
especially on the road. Yeah,
on the road, things happen, and I mean, planes are generally safer than cars, but still, people are taking cars to airports,
yep,
to and from airports, and then the airplane. So, there is risk there, not just on the field or on the court, that athletes, a good reason why they need trusts and so forth. But to your point, the medical directive, the healthcare directive is important, because athletes do have such a wear and tear on their bodies. And if there's an accident to the point where they become incapacitated, then the healthcare directive takes over. And that allows someone that the athlete has designated to make decisions for the athlete. And they might have special provisions. For example, one provision might be, if I hit my head so hard and I'm brain dead, now my heart can be kept beating. My lungs can be put on a pump, or an air pump, and they can keep my body alive. But my brain, 2 doctors say that my brain is toast. I'm in a persistent vegetative state. That's what we call it. And the doctors say essentially that there's no way I can come back as an athlete. Not only can I not play again, but I can never even be a functional human being again. Then I reserve the right on my healthcare directive to have them essentially pull the plug and let me go. And that's a very common clause that a lot of athletes and a lot of people put in their healthcare directives. If I can be saved and I can come back and I'm not terminally ill and I'm not going to be a vegetable, then do everything you can to save me, however long it takes. But if I cross that line, according to the doctors, where my brain is no longer generating an electric signal, and I'm in a persistent vegetative state, and I'm in a coma, and I can never essentially be, enjoy life or be present again, then just let me go. And in my experience, most of the athletes feel that way. So that's a common clause. But I think maybe the common rule is, whatever an athlete or a person thinks is important to them for their medical care, we should have that in the document. And everybody has different desires and preferences, and whatever their preferences are, that's what the document should express.
Now, this is kind of a weird thing that I'm going to say here, but let's just say LeBron James, and he's in the hospital and he's in a vegetative state. God forbid that happens, especially with the finals going on right now, the playoffs. What do we? I guess in that situation, would his remains be worth more, right? So he doesn't want to donate the organ. What do we do in that? Is there something weird around organs, not just for an athlete, but just for anybody, right? I don't want to donate them. I want to sell them because they're worth more. I don't know. Have you seen anything around that?
That's actually funny, Chris. That's a good question. And sorry, LeBron, this is just theoretical. Nothing's going to happen to you. You're going to outlive all of us.
That's right.
But yes, I mean, for example, when a scientist dies, sometimes we have a special provision in their trust and will that says, take my brain, remove it from my skull, take my brain and preserve it for study, for science. They shave off sections of it and they can do analysis on it.
Wow.
So for scientists, we have such things. For athletes, once they're gone, I don't know. You really can't use part of that athlete. I mean, actually, there could be an organ, right? There could be a heart. There could be the world's most amazing liver, bone marrow. And so what you're really getting at is the organ donation provision that's in the healthcare directive. And athletes or anyone can designate whether or not they want to have organ donation. And there are just generally different types of provisions. You could say, for example, if I'm gone, take anything you want.
Keep it easy.
And yeah, make it easy. Take any part of me you want and use it for any purpose you want. And a lot of people are comfortable with that. Sometimes people want it to be a little more refined. And I've had people say, just take my eyes, or just take my brain, or just take or whatever. And that's okay too. You can even leave your whole body to science. In fact, we have several clients that are now and will be traveling around with that exhibit where you have the plasticized human bodies. Have you seen that? I can't remember.
The bodies in motion,
or bodies in motion.
Yeah.
Yep. I've got to say, I know some people in there.
Wow.
But so that's even a wish that could be made on somebody's estate planning documents.
Wow, very specific.
Put me on tour. Take my body, convert it to plasticized muscle, and send me on tour.
Yeah.
And that's, people
that's
do
interesting.
Stuff like that.
That would be interesting.
That's right. So, the bottom line is, whatever an athlete or a person wants to do, if it's legal, we can put it into their estate planning documents. And sometimes these types of special clauses really can benefit others. I had a client sitting in my office right there this week that is living with another man's heart. And he got that heart transplant 7 years ago.
Wow.
And that could be an athlete's heart. I mean, athletes are in shape. They have amazing hearts. So an athlete could give their heart to somebody else and save a life and provide for someone's future.
Yeah.
Can't tell you who it was, but yeah. So all that's very important. So estate planning is not all about money, right? It's about one's personal wishes and as you said, special directives with respect to one's body parts. Part of the program.